here's Lauren Boebert on Steve Bannon's show to plug her new book, which I'm sure is a fascinating read. And of course, the subject of separation of church and state comes up because you're hearing a lot of right wingers talk about the concept of separation of church and state. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. It's in one of the letters. And yes, the phrasing, that's accurate, right? But they leave out the fact that there isn't an establishment of religion clause in the Constitution. So, like, the separation of church and state is just a shorthand for people. But they parse that and they're pedantic about it because of what they're trying to implement a Christian fascist religious dogma in this country. And they're also just like bad at making this case. Here's Lauren Boebert trying to make this case to Steve Bannon, in which she flubs her point, and also, of course, the point is centrally Islamophobic, targeting Ilhan Omar.
That's ignorantly say this is in the Constitution, separation of church and state, and they don't know what it means, and they think that means you can't talk about God. Well, if there really is this separation of church and state like they believe it means, well, then what is Ilhan doing with her hijab on? I mean, why is she able to go in there with that? I mean, why aren't they shouting that from the rooftop? Separation of church and state.
Can you hang on for?
Yeah. So, first of all,
what was that word, by the way?
She mixed up jihad with hijab. She kind of like word melded those things together.
Hijab.
Oh no, I think that's right. That's right.
That was too. She was like her. Hijab.
I can't think about all the scary words in my mind. Can't parse them. So let's just, yeah.
I feel like I'm Googling it, and some people are saying that hijab on Google can also refer to the face covering. So maybe she knew that. I just thought she flipped it too. But it also says a Muslim court official often.
Yeah, but Ilhan Omar doesn't. Ilhan Omar does not wear a face covering. So
yeah, that's true.
That.
So
but anyway, so naturally, she's. Every time she goes after Ilhan Omar in a racist way, I'm sure she gets some campaign donations from people that hate Muslims, so that seems to be her bread and butter at this point. But the straw manning there, the Democrats think that the First Amendment says that you can't, quote, talk about God. No, we say that the government cannot establish a religion, aka abortion laws, which, by the way, Jewish law says that abortion is perfectly fine. And yet, there are states throughout this country, based on the Supreme Court ruling by a bunch of Christians who are ruling based on that ideology, has nullified Jewish law because abortion bans establish a religion. That is exactly what the left is against. And then she says that, why she conflates the concept of religious dogma being enshrined into federal and state law with Ilhan Omar's personal choices of what she wants to wear. I mean, that is just, of course, it's a racist point, but it's also just such a silly one too.
Does Lauren Boebert not have herself some cross earrings or
exactly
or a necklace with the cross on it? I mean, how many people in Congress are probably wearing a cross around their neck or somewhere like that? Give me a break. The conflation between the two things is ridiculous. I know the obvious thing to do would be to explain to her the various different ways that laws that the Republicans support actually go against other religions, but it's just it's not even the direct argument to make to her, because what she's arguing is bullshit. Anyone can personally show their own religious beliefs and follow their own religious values in any way they'd like, as long as it does not infringe on anybody else in law, policy, etc. That is separation of church and state. It's just unbelievable she would bring up that. Why is Ilhan Omar allowed to wear what she chooses to wear? Just,
well, I mean,
my God.
I mean, that's the part that she would take umbrage with, that her religion is not allowed to infringe upon everyone else's rights. Because ultimately, as Emma points out, this is about establishing a Christian fascist dictatorship in America. But at the lowest level, they would say, their real grievance is that they're not allowed to, in an argument about abortion and an argument about any number of our rights, allowed to quote the Bible as evidence against whatever scientific or social or practical point people who are not religious are making, and having that like particular moral religious positioning supersede whatever any scientist is saying or whatever any particular secular person is saying about what they want for America. And, at the end of the day, some of that requires everybody to pretend as though that's not what they want. But certainly she feels, and I would imagine a lot of Christians feel this way about Ilhan Omar wearing not a hijab, but wearing a headscarf in Congress, that the very presence of any kind of signifier that she is Muslim is in some way infringing on their right to believe that Christianity is the superseding religion and it's the one true religion in the world. So they view it as infringing upon their rights for her to be Muslim at all, because they think that's what their right is, to have a Christian country.
They think their right is to be the dominant group in society, and that anything that threatens that is in some way like equivalent to actual legal stripping of their rights. That's how they are able to justify their victimization and conflate it with, like, I don't know, say what every other minority group and many other minority groups have gone through, like, in this country.
And that's what makes them, I would just say that's what makes them right wingers too. That's not what makes them religious. Like the victim complex that some religious people have is what allows them to align with other right wing demagogues on a variety of issues. But it's not necessarily an inherent part of their religion. I think that that's just something that Americans have adopted upon themselves, especially once they, are enculturated into certain like dominant groups, that like there's any reason that they have, whether it's religious or socioeconomic, is a good reason for why their values should be sort of like planted on the world, and why like all these groups who exist outside of that religious or socioeconomic or racial group is out to get them. It's a very pervasive and complex victim mentality. But, I wouldn't even say every religious person is like that. It's mostly just evangelicals. It's mostly just evangelical Christians in America and the various types of people who don't know that they're evangelicals, but more or less are.
Although will say I believe that I might have a religious objection to Kyrsten Sinema's outfits. I might want to assert that.
She's quirky. She's so quirky. It's like if Lorelai Gilmore was in Congress.
It sounds
do not do that. That is unfair to Lorelai Gilmore.
Sounds like Emma's religious beliefs are infringing on
I take religious exemption to any Lauren Graham slander.
This is a First Amendment violation, Brandon.
But can I just say, because I'm a sick individual, I watched about like 25 minutes of that interview between Lauren Boebert and Steve Bannon.
Yeah, I came into the office this morning and Bradley looked like actually genuinely depressed, and then he told me what he was doing.
Just chewing tape like an NFL scout between Lauren Boebert and Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
But the question that precedes this conversation is, Steve Bannon's like, so some people are calling you a theocrat. Like, you're not. I mean, that's such a crazy allegation, right? Being considered a theocrat. Then Boebert proceeds to say, no, I'm not. I just believe in like the Judeo-Christian principles that are the bedrock of this country. And I'm like, oh, okay, so basically that translates to, I'm not a theocrat. Let me tell you why exactly I'm a literal theocrat.
Yeah, I mean, if technically, like, once you say Judeo-Christian, I would say, like, probably she's not theocrat in the technical sense, because that's not like a real religion. That's not like a real religious dogma. Judeo-Christian is just like a coded phrase for like white rights in this country.
Yeah.
Like the rights to be homophobic, the right to be, racist, the right to like not being canceled online for those things, the right to give all of your guests at your restaurant food poisoning, all of these unalienable rights that were included in the Constitution. Or if they weren't included in the Constitution, it's because the founding fathers were afraid of pushback from the woke people of their day.
HHS violations and flagging me for that is a violation of my religious rights. I have the right to serve people anything they want, and they can poop their guts out. And if you actually try to go after me, violation of my religion.
And as a Lauren Boebert supporter, I will say that it is my right as well to poop my guts out if I so plan to go to Lauren Boebert's restaurant.
I like to let the free marketplace that is the microbiome in my gut decide whether or not Lauren Boebert's food is appropriate for human consumption. And that's just the way, God and or Abraham Lincoln wanted it to be.
Yeah, the free market is the most efficient way to determine that. We know this. We know this.